Hey guys, it's really windy out here today, so hopefully you can hear me okay. But I discovered something yesterday about this truck that I wanted to talk to you about. Something that I guess maybe I should have known, but I didn't know. I made an assumption, and you know what they say about making assumptions. So anyway, so long story short, yesterday we'd been camping. I'm going to show you some footage that we recorded while we were down there. But we've been camping and four-wheeling again this week, and yesterday was our last day. We were planning on coming back to the house. And before we left, we decided to take one more rip. It was about an hour after sunrise. The weather actually was beautiful. It rained a little bit in the middle of the night, but then it cleared back up again. So we went out for one more trip. And as soon as we got down to the edge of the lake, we saw these guys that were stuck down there. So these two guys came in the middle of the night, and it was dark, obviously. They didn't really have much familiarity with the area, and they drove down there by the lake, and the water level's really low because, like I said, we're in the middle of a drought, so the water level's way down. So they drove out there where the water normally is, but right now it just looks like dry dirt. But it's one of those situations where it's dry dirt on the top, but just a few inches below that, it's still kind of nasty. So they drove out there, and it was like a GMC Acadia or something, Chevy Trailblazer, I don't know. It was a smaller SUV, and they went out there and they got stuck. So we saw them. I looked at the situation. I've got enough experience to know that ATV is not going to get the job done. So I asked the guys if anybody was coming to help them with the truck, and they said no. Now, this could be a whole other story, but basically there's a lot of guys camping 50 yards, 60 yards away from these guys. There's people camping, and they've got campers set up and trailers and side-by-sides and heavy-duty pickup trucks. Most of these guys drive heavy-duty pickup trucks when they pull those campers. So there's all kinds of people around that could have helped these guys, and they're within sight of these guys, but apparently none of them would agree to help these fellas out. They didn't want to hook their trucks up to these guys and try to pull on them, which is absolutely ridiculous and kind of makes me angry, to be honest. But anyway, long story short, I told the guys, I was like, if you want me to, I'll go back to my campsite, which is a little bit farther away. I'll unhook my truck from the trailer. I'll bring my truck down here and try to pull you out. And they said that would be awesome. They'd been there for 3 or 4 hours. Nobody would help them. So I took this truck down there, put it in 4-low. Mind you, I'm on dry, relatively loose gravel because I'm up away from the lake. I'll show you a couple of pictures so that you can kind of see the situation for yourself. I wasn't in the mud. Those guys were in the mud. I was up, 30, 40 feet away on the dry gravel. I put it in low range, and I started to tug on them a little bit. I didn't yank on it. I didn't give it a lot of throttle. I was just kind of easing into it, just kind of getting a feel for it, seeing how much I was going to have to give it, to get these guys out of this mud hole. My tires started to spin a little bit down into the gravel. I dug a hole 4 or 5 inches deep. So I backed up, got a little bit of a different line, tugged on them again. Started to dig down again. These guys are pretty stuck. So I backed up and took a third shot at it. Mind you, this is all relatively quick, probably 20 or 30 seconds had elapsed. And the third time I put tension on the rope, I got a message on the dash that said the 4-wheel drive system has overheated, and so performance is going to be reduced, and I basically lost my 4-wheel drive capability. Now again, just to recap what I just told you, I'm on loose gravel, relatively loose gravel because we're next to a lake. I'm not in any wet conditions, not in any mud, I'm not buried or anything, I'm just up on loose gravel. Got a long strap hooked to these guys. I'm in low range, and I'm being pretty easy on my truck. And it's only been 20 or 30 seconds since I started pulling on them. I mean, I had just hooked onto these guys to try and help them out. And the truck throws in the towel and gives up on me. It's absolutely pathetic, to be honest. It's kind of embarrassing. It pisses me off. So I did some research on this, and what I have found is, here's where my assumption went wrong. On these trucks that have the BorgWarner 48-11 transfer case, it's the one that has the 4 auto setting on the dash. You see a button that says 4 auto, then you know you've got that transfer case. When you're in the automatic 4-wheel drive, which is basically the all-wheel drive setting, right, there has to be some way for the front and the rear to slip. That's just how those systems work. So I knew that there was some kind of a clutch in there, that would be used when you're in that mode, and typically you're going to use that in the wintertime if it's snowing or something like that. But I assumed that when you went to 4 high or especially 4 low, that the truck would mechanically lock the front and the rear differential, or the front and the rear drive shaft, I should say, would be mechanically locked. And so you'd have a 50-50 hard split there. And that is not the case. So apparently the transfer cases, those 4811 transfer cases that are on a lot of these 4-wheel drive trucks, they use that clutch in every mode. So even in low range, even in 4 low, which is supposed to be intended for heavier duty work, even in that range, it's got a clutch in there that provides the propulsion for the front drive shaft. I keep saying differential, but the front drive shaft gets its propulsion through that clutched system. And when that clutch starts to slip a little bit, obviously it generates heat, the fluid heats up, and the next thing you know, you lose your 4-wheel drive because the computer on board the truck says, hey, this stuff's getting hot, we're gonna electronically limit how much torque is going to the front end. So I learned the hard way that the 4-wheel drive system on these trucks, if you get the 4811 transfer case, which again has the 4 auto button, is extremely light duty. And I did some research online. You guys can do the same thing. A lot of guys have had the same trouble driving in the snow. Some guys said theirs overheated when they were going up their personal driveway in the snow. I mean, it's just really pathetic how light duty these 4-wheel drive systems are. I don't even know why they put a 4 low setting on them if you can't use it for what I was trying to use it for yesterday, which is to help somebody else. It's pathetic. So, long story short, if you're gonna use your truck for off-road use, for pulling people out of ditches, for deep snow, you live in the mountains, you got a driveway that's kind of steep, whatever the case might be, if you're buying a 4-wheel drive truck because you need 4-wheel drive, do not buy one of these that has the all-wheel drive setting, the 48-11 transfer case. Don't do it, okay? The one that you want is the 48-12, which apparently does have a mechanical lock. When you put it in 4 high or 4 low, it locks together. Probably uses the same kind of system that we've had for decades, where there's a chain in there and the chain physically locks the front and the rear drive shaft. So you do get a 50-50 split. You're not going to have any overheating issues, none of that. You can get that on the Rebel. If you get the Rebel package, some of the off-road packages also have it. If you get the TRX, it has a 48-13 transfer case, which is just a heavier duty version of the 4812. So any of the off-road oriented Rams, the Rebel, maybe the off-road packages, the TRX, any of those are going to be fine. And that's what you really want if you need 4-wheel drive. If you're somebody who really needs 4-wheel drive, to do the kinds of things that people buy trucks for, that's what you want. A system like this, in my opinion, is only going to be good if it's a light, snow out on the road, a little bit of snow, some slush, whatever. You just need a little bit of additional traction for nasty weather. That's about the only time I can see this system being useful at all. So FYI on that, I found out the hard way that those clutches are used in every mode on this transfer case, which is a major pain in the rear end. So thankfully, we got another guy to bring his truck down there, and my truck and the other guy's truck combined got those guys unstuck. But it just was another lesson that I learned. Unfortunately, you got to do a lot of research these days on stuff that you would never even imagine that you need to research before you buy a truck. So if you're shopping a Ram, and I'm probably Ford and GM, they probably have the same kind of thing going on. I'm sure those companies also have all-wheel drive transfer cases that you can get on certain trim levels. So they probably deal with the same things. I'm not really trying to pick on Ram here, but the package that you get on your truck does matter. So anyway, FYI on that. Now, having said all of that, the rest of the trip was great. We had a wonderful time, and I was very impressed with the way that this truck tows. I was surprised at how good it tows, how much torque it gives you while you're towing. The fuel economy was really good, all things considered. So super happy with the performance of the truck on the trip. and there's always good and bad, right? But for now, I'm going to take you to some video of the good time that we had down there, the Land Between the Lakes. If you guys haven't been to Land Between the Lakes to ride, you need to go down there and check it out, because that is probably one of the most beautiful places that you could possibly go to ride your side-by-sides and ATVs. So you can see how the truck is loaded. We got some camping stuff in the back of the cab. We got some more camping stuff out there in the bed. We got a couple of ATVs back here. So I figure that we've probably got somewhere around 2,500 pounds, maybe close to 3,000 maximum back here on the trailer. And then we got our camping stuff back here, of course. So what I wanted you to notice was that when we hit those hills back there, it would downshift to 5th gear. And I'm pretty happy with that. And then also we're getting between 10 and 11 miles per gallon so far, which is about what I expected. The Eco Diesel on this same trip with this same load was doing about 14 miles per gallon. So that's pretty much what I've been seeing loaded and unloaded. There's about a 4 mile per gallon difference between the Hemi and the Eco Diesel in the real world. And of course, gasoline, as you can see over there, is way cheaper than diesel fuel. So in the grand scheme of things, we're actually saving money with the Hemi V8. We're gonna go in here and get some ice for the cooler, and then gas up the Hemi, and we'll be headed on down the road. But yeah, I'm pretty ecstatic with the performance. This thing pulling those hills in 5th gear with this load on it. I mean, the Eco Diesel would sometimes downshift to 5th gear too. It liked to stay in 6th and 7th, but sometimes it would downshift to 5th also. So with the Hemi staying in 5th gear and above, I am more than happy with that. And actually, to be honest, I'm kind of surprised. It's doing a great job. And it looks like that we've got a hitchhiker. That whole in the front. It looks pretty tame, but it's pretty bad actually, isn't it? Well, I guess we need to get the strap out. I mean, it's not that deep. It's just that stuff is like clay, and it just sucks you in. bad thing about the Can-Am having the muffler right there in the back is that it's hard to hook up the strap without getting burned. You got to be careful. Boy, that's a bad hole. Wow. I had to actually give it some throttle. I'm in low range. Well, I'm in reverse, but I do have the four-wheel drive turned on. That stuff is nasty right now. I guess he's gonna try the bigger hole. I don't know why, because he just got stuck in the little one. One of the problems that we're having, I mean, obviously there's some mud down here by the lake, but we haven't had any significant rain in about 29 or 30 days, which is really unusual for Kentucky. And everything is just bone dry right now. I mean, it's just a cloud of dust. Even with helmets and goggles on, your face just gets covered in dirt. And really, it's not a whole lot of fun to ride down here today, but we're running out of good weather, so we got to take advantage of what we get. Well, I don't think it's going to make it very far. Well, he's still moving. Oh man, you can't give up. You got it far enough that you have to give it a shot now. Look at that. Now this is a classic example of where if he had aftermarket tires, he would have pulled right through that. But those factory tires just don't have enough cleat on them for heavy mud use. Man, he almost made it though. I think he's stuck now, but he almost got it. All right, he's calling for help. I really think that if you had carried some more momentum, you probably would have pulled on through the end. I don't know, it gets pretty nasty there toward the end. But yeah, I can't believe you made it through the watery part of the hole. That's actually pretty impressive. All right, do you think the Suzuki could get any farther? What if I lock the differential? And of course I have different tires. These are those 489s. Let's just see if it'll make it any farther. Yeah, so it looks like I made it about as far as he did, but once you get to this point, that's just solid clay and it just sucks you in.